Hello, and welcome to Part of My Disruption. I am Alan Berkson. I'm the Director of Community Outreach for Freshdesk, and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. Disruptive. The doctor is in the house, Jonathan Yarmis, and we are broadcasting live from the Stanford Innovation Center in beautiful downtown Stanford.
Yes, not Burbank.
Not Burbank, beautiful downtown Stanford. We are also...
you wonder how many people understand that reference.
Certainly not the Jimmy Fallon watchers.
No, not our children.
No, definitely not. We are actually also broadcasting on Periscope because we got to keep up with the technology, right, for old fogies like us.
Yeah, and we're not quite down to the Snapchat version of the show yet.
So there was some interesting news yesterday, which I think we should start off with. I'm not going to say the title of the funniest article that I saw.
Oh, come on. You tweeted about it.
Well, let's just say Jack Dorsey and Dick Costolo both have names that can make for interesting headlines.
Yeah.
Use your imagination.
Yes.
This is a family show.
Yeah. Yeah. My mother is watching, I believe.
But so why don't we start us off with I mean, we've always had a lot of interesting things to say about Twitter in terms of its value proposition and knowing what business they're in. And,
yes, and apparently Dick Costolo couldn't solve that matter because he was fired, and Twitter is hoping that in a Steve Jobsian move, bringing back founder Jack Dorsey is exactly what's needed to get the company on a path toward growth and profitability.
And is it?
Short answer, no.
No.
Twitter, as we've discussed with great frequency, has some terribly intractable problems. Problem number one, and this in some ways is the least of their problems, the out-of-box experience is terrible.
Right.
The time to value for Twitter is measured frequently in months.
Well, I took a Lyft, my first Lyft ride, by the way, in Atlanta. They give you 5 free rides if you sign up. It was pretty cool. And the Lyft driver was in transition, which I imagine a lot of drivers are, and this is how he's making some extra money. And we talked about he's an artist and a musician and a writer, and he wants to get started on Twitter. And so he said, how do I do it? And there's no...
The cab ride wasn't long enough.
The cab ride is not long enough to teach somebody how to get stared with Twitter.
Yeah.
It's such a high curve.
More importantly, why would you? And this is something, my mother, hi Ma, is always asking me about things. It's like time to value on Facebook is nearly instantaneous. You get on Facebook, you see pictures of your grandkids, your friends, things like that. You get immediate understanding.
But does Facebook allow you to go through your address book and find people to connect with it initially? I haven't. I mean,
it's been so long.
Yeah,
and the answer is I believe so.
Anybody on Periscope, if you know the answer?
Yeah, I believe the answer is yes. Not only that, when you give Facebook permissions, there are all sorts of things where it suggests people you may know, some of which are totally bizarre.
But some of them are creepily accurate.
Yes.
Creepily accurate.
Yes.
But with Twitter, you're like thrown into this mess, like thrown into CES with 100,000 people and say, go ahead, go talk to people.
Yeah. No, that's a better experience. Yeah.
Right.
The other problem Twitter has, and this is a larger problem, why would you sign up? For a lot of people, the value they get from Twitter, unless you need to know something the instant it happens, for instance, you can rely on your regular news sources taking the information from Twitter and putting it into media you already consume, whether it's broadcast or digital. Pet peeve, people who tweet their Facebook feed. So there are lots of ways people can get value from Twitter without actually being members of Twitter.
Right.
And
well, but so how do you answer? Because I get that question all the time. Because I always tell people I love Twitter, and I get a lot of value. I know you get a lot of value out of Twitter. But that question, what's so great about Twitter?
Well, the reason why I do it is Twitter, having carefully cultivated a network of followers over years, and we met on Twitter.
That's right.
So obviously I'm not that careful about my cultivation, but
right.
But having carefully cultivated, when we'll talk about the evolution of search, a little later in the book. I view search. There are a variety of ways I search for things. Google is a highly useful search engine, but it is largely non-contextual, and it doesn't really know me.
And it's also not. You actually have to go through some. You have to jump through some hoops to get the most recent.
Yes.
As opposed to right.
Yeah. Whereas with Twitter, there are times things, and because people who I follow oftentimes, have similar sets of interests, backgrounds, and so on, they'll understand the context. So I can go, who was the guy in that Coca-Cola commercial? And if you Google that, you get 72 minutes, none of which are the one I'm looking for.
Right.
Where when I do it in Twitter, Twitter's a smart human-powered search engine. Right. And that's worth something to me. But I'm off to one end of the bell curve. I think the time it requires to cultivate it when the engine gets less useful and stuff like that. So there's a lot of work required, and hence Twitter's problem. Challenge they've also got, and this is perhaps the most fundamental challenge, and let's talk about who might acquire them. It's really difficult to monetize. And look at Microsoft. Microsoft made a business for a long time out of it, and even they now, with Windows 10, are basically saying, I'm not sure that approach is going to do things we're trying to do. Let's give away the infrastructure.
That's amazing.
Yes.
It is amazing to me. That's another topic.
Yeah.
But so, look, I don't know Jack. But
candid.
If you were in his shoes, you just got made CEO of Twitter. What's your plan? What's your strategy?
My plan, there's tremendous value in Twitter that has not been liberated. So, right now we focus so much on our user experience. What do we get out of it?
Right.
And what we get out of it oftentimes relates to something that happens to scroll by on the screen, and we serendipitously happen to notice something of interest. There is no easy way, and it's been left largely to third parties, to mine the value of the fire hose. There's been no way to set up
the fire hose.
The fire hose, is the gazillion tweets a second. That newcomers to Twitter who haven't figured out to use something like TweetDeck or Hootsuite are just presented with this scrolling list of things that's too fast to read, or how do I find anything? So what if there were alerts and triggers so that I was proactively notified of things that met my requirements? How can they turn around and better enable that kind of stuff for marketers and other relationship builders? So they've got this tremendous pool of information and haven't done much on their own other than let people buy ads in the stream. So I think the information is large.
So putting you in Jack's shoes, I think I have to note that for all fair. A couple of years back, they changed their API rules for how third parties can access it. And they had a pretty robust third-party app community.
Yeah.
And then they basically, shot them all in the foot.
Yeah, because they were getting all of the value while Twitter was spending all the money and doing all of the work.
To me, there's got to be a way to either reinvigorate that, because otherwise they've got to do all that innovation themselves. I always thought that was a mistake.
I agree. As a matter of fact, at the time I wrote a research note, that basically said, that this is a seminal moment in Twitter, and that, attack your own ecosystem with great caution. The challenge they've got, if they stand up and say, oh, we were wrong, we need to build the ecosystem,
right.
that there are those once bitten, twice shy. So I agree that that's one path to it. But the more important point, I think, if you're going to compete with your own ecosystem, do a good job of it. They competed with the ecosystem and did a bad job. And that is a lousy formula.
Right. All right. So this past week we were in Atlanta for the Social Media Today's The Social Shakeup. It's a fantastic marketing conference.
Yeah, and those of you, Robin Frey Carey is somebody I've known for about 8 years now. She runs this website, Social Media Today, which is really the best thought leadership platform for social media. There are a large number of contributors, both formally to the content pool and through the community aspects. And this is her 3rd year running the show, and you're right, great event.
And we normally talk more about technology than marketing and branding, but I think that there's some interesting things that has to do with digital media and how people communicate on social. I know you're a car guy.
Yes.
And last year I did a panel with 2 car companies. I did a Porsche and Nissan, and you went to a Porsche session. And there's something about how they think of brands and their community, which I think, well, talk about your experience. I think.
Yeah, the interesting thing that, they had a senior corporate communications guy from Porsche there at a social media conference, and he spent about 97% of his presentation talking about how Porsche cultivates and carefully manages its brand and all sorts of things from a very, very traditional brand manager perspective. And what I found, off-putting, first of all, you're at a social media conference. It's odd that you're not talking about social media. Second of all, not only are you at a social media conference, there are perhaps, I would say, maybe second only to Apple enthusiasts or automotive enthusiasts and their sense of community around the cars they own and drive.
They might be that, because they've been around for decades.
Yes. Yeah, but
those communities have deep roots.
Yeah, but I know what you're trying to assert.
Right.
Insult an Apple person and see what happens to your Twitter feed. If I insult if I go, I love Ferrari, I'm not going to get flamed by Porsche people. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
So that's why I'll go second.
Okay.
But the passions are deep and abiding.
In this case, I'll let you have that point.
Wow! Mark this moment down. Victory. I can die a happy man.
Right.
Hopefully not soon, but yeah, it's not quite my wife, ex-wife, conceding I'm right on. There were moments like that.
All right.
Fleeting though they may be. Anyhow, Porsche communities, car driver communities, the enthusiast pool there is huge, and you'd think that an auto manufacturer might want to tap into the community, And when asked about it, he basically said, "Yeah, we've got a Facebook page, and a million people have liked us, and we've got Twitter followers and an Instagram page." And I'm sitting there thinking, it's not quite mobilizing the community.
No.
And when I asked him directly about it, he had at the very least a reasonable rationalization. And his rationalization was, these communities are working real well on their own. If we get involved, the only thing that can happen is we screw it up. I don't agree with that position, although I'll give him credit for novel thinking.
Right.
And elements of truth. There are probably 2 elements of truth to that. One, he pointed out the challenge, alert for ethnically insensitive comment. But he pointed out that perhaps Germans are not particularly adept at doing social. We will do social. and that it's not in the corporate culture to do that. And if they're not going to do it well, there's a reasonable likelihood.
But they also don't have to. Every brand on the planet looks at an engaged community and says, I want that.
Yes.
They have it, and they don't even know
what to do with
how it works, how it got created, how to manage it, and what to do with it.
And how to enable and empower it.
Right.
Because there are few things, brands would kill for what these, high-end auto manufacturers have. They're all, this is a market that's not growing. It's a zero-sum game. It's not like I'm going to buy a Porsche and a Ferrari. I don't have enough money.
Okay.
I'm not buying either.
But it's not the desire that's limiting. It's the cash. Okay.
Yeah. But there is a lot of brand loyalty. I mean, there are certain models of these high-end cars. You can't, they announce a new car. You can't go into the dealership and say, I'd like to buy that car. What the first thing they do is offer it to the existing community, who gets the new cars and then puts their old cars into the secondary market or so on. So brand loyalty is hugely important to these people. And I think, there's a huge missed opportunity. So that to me was probably the most interesting, session of the week, from the perspective of they've got what everybody wants and aren't doing anything.
But the other trend, we talked about this, and I think this is what you're talking about, is part of a broader trend of brands saying one thing and saying they believe one thing, but still acting in a different way.
Oh, this is
you asked one of my favorite questions. Who did you ask that question?
That was the B2B brand marketing manager of Twitter.
Of Twitter, right.
Yes, interestingly enough.
Interestingly.
Yes, and the question I asked, the discussion that's been going on forever. You could have asked a brand owner back when we were pups, longer ago for me than you.
Just a little bit.
Yes, but nonetheless, who owns the brand? And they would have given lip service to the notion that the customer really owns the brand, when in fact, no brand manager back then believed that. They believed they were the steward of the brand. They were the ones who shaped it. And in a world when the media was defined by 3 networks, a couple of local channels, some radio stations and newspapers,
media.
There was probably some element of truth to that.
Well, it was broadcast.
Yes.
Complete broadcast.
Yes, and word of mouth was literally word of mouth. You told somebody who told somebody, and if you had a particularly strong opinion, maybe you reached 30 people.
Right.
Now I tell my 5,000 Twitter followers who tell their 5,000 Twitter followers, and I've gotten to 25 million people quickly.
Right.
And it changes the equation. And what we've discovered is, the truth of the matter is, in my mind, that most senior brand people still believe that they own the brand.
That's not what they say.
Yeah. Oh, they say, no, this modern social world, the customer owns the brand, and we've got to engage and communicate and so on.
Right.
And there are so many examples of where they say one thing but behave a different way. Right. Their Twitter feed is largely a broadcast feed. One of the best insights of the week I got, they had the head of social for NASA, which is talk about another enthusiast community. They've got a great community.
He's got the coolest job.
Yeah, he absolutely does.
Well, he's got the best content.
Yes.
I was going to say on the planet, but it's not.
Even there too, but you're right. The best content in the galaxy.
In the galaxy.
Yeah.
In the universe. Actually, a picture of galaxies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We can let that go.
Yeah.
But anyway.
No, but one of his points was, and lessons learned is, if you're going to be an authentic brand, it is a way.
Right.
And that's what a lot of brand social engagement is asking, a thinly veiled, aren't we great?
And then let's hear a chorus of,
yes,
of course, you're the best.
Yeah. And we've got a great example of how not to do it from our experience. both my experience leading up to the event and the experiment you instigated in your session.
So go with your experience and I'll talk about it.
So the conference was held at the W Hotel in Atlanta, the W Midtown. So I'm arriving into Atlanta around rush hour. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'll take MARTA from the airport to the nearest train station, which the hotel helpfully said which MARTA stop it was. And I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be 85 degrees and humid. I've got 2 heavy bags with me. How am I going to get from the MARTA station to the hotel? Does the hotel have a shuttle? If not, are cabs regularly available? Or is it well served by Twitter? So the hotel, like lots of hotels, has on its website, an email contact, a Facebook link, and a Twitter link. So I emailed them. Crickets. A couple of days later, I tweet basically going, "Don't you check your email?" Crickets. I'm still waiting for the response.
Right. So then we were doing a session. I had a couple of, had 3 customer care specialists. And one of them complained about the fact that water bottles in the hotel were $5 for a water bottle. And he said, that's insane.
And it's in the room with a little sign. If you don't notice, it would be easy to have missed the fact that it was $5 for that little bottle of water.
So he said, let's try an experiment. Let's all tweet at the Twitter handle complaining about the fact that the water bottles were $5.
And he asked if anybody knew what the Twitter handle was. And of course, having failed at it, I knew it was WATL Midtown. Yeah.
And I will tell you, as of now, there's been no responses.
Yeah. About 20 people, 25 people in the room tweeted repeatedly, and crickets. So and this is not only do they have it on their webpage, you go in the elevators and they've got the Facebook link and the Twitter handle. I mean, they're liberally promoting the fact that they're on social media.
And that's it.
Yes.
We're there.
We're there. We don't say very much. We don't listen at all, but by golly, we've got a Twitter handle.
Yeah, so there's what we call it, the cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
We'll tell you we're social, but that's not. But our actions belie that.
Yes. And this is one of those things where it was interesting because I don't know how many people you talk to at that. Well, I know you talk to lots of people. I talk to lots of people, and it's talking to them about their frustrations and successes with social. And this was a lot of people who had senior social roles at major organizations.
Right.
Interestingly, a large percentage of the audience was, young to youngish and female. And this is something I found in the early days of the PC industry. That what happens is, women who hit the glass ceiling in traditional disciplines, the male-oriented marketing world, men look down at social, oh, that's a game, and they're paying lip service to it, and women have found that as an opportunity to get involved and rise to the ranks, and hope to rise with that community. It worked in the PC industry, but asking a lot of them, what their frustrations were at their own companies, a lot of it really came down to, we think we can do some really great things to move the needle, but our management does not really understand, support, nor embrace social. Their notion of social is it's not just another brand for pushing out, another channel for pushing out messages, broadcasting, and not.
So I was in London last week, and I ate at probably a dozen restaurants, and I can maybe name 2 of them, but one of them I remember. I ate, and I think there's a lesson here. I ate at Carnaby Burger. And we're sitting there eating, and one of the guys we're eating with, he wanted an extra barbecue sauce, but it was like one of their specialty sauces. It wasn't just having ketchup. Our lunch was going to cost $75, and they wanted to charge us $2 for the barbecue sauce. And we said, that's ridiculous. So we didn't get it. But of course, I have to tweet about it. So I looked up their Twitter handle. I saw Carnaby Burger Co. I tweeted at them. I said, I think it's crazy that here we were spending some, and they wanted to charge us $2 for the barbecue sauce. And small brand, this is not, you know, this is not McDonald's or any, this is a little Berkeley. And they got back to me within an hour and said, granted, they changed channels, which is not always the best thing, but they told me to send an email. They sent me an email. I got an email response right away saying, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. In fact, that's a terrible policy. We're going to scrap it. And next time you come in, can you have beers on us? I will not forget that.
Yeah.
I remember Carnaby Burger on Carnaby Street because of that experience. So they took what for me would have been a negative experience that maybe I tell people about, oh, I can't believe that. And they turned it around and now I tell everybody what a great place it is.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of data about, you know, what a bad customer will do and what you can do. I mean, this is your area, you know, what good customer service can do to turn a complainant into a brand advocate.
And I think that was a big theme at the social shakeup. You know, they always say, you know, customer service is a marketing opportunity, but I think social really brings that to the forefront because that really gives you that opportunity to have conversations that aren't just coming to you, but maybe someone's just complaining in general and you can actually get involved.
Yeah, and you turn people into brand advocates. You know, I mean, there was something in the Wall Street Journal this week. They were talking about travel, and they you know, showing life at the front lines of a United customer service agent in Chicago. So, and you know, United's probably thinking, "Wow, this will reflect." You know, we've got great people doing things in a difficult light. And I am a, shall we say, a reformed United flyer. You know, I used to be insanely loyal to them, 2 million miles. You know, I could bore you to tears with things, you know, I did for United. And then, you know, somewhere along the way, I felt like they turned their back on me. So out of this story, one of the things they had was a component where United was talking about upgrades, you know, and increasing. It used to be you'd always get upgraded and they wouldn't fly with the business class cabin empty because it was an opportunity for people in the back to sample what it was like up front and maybe next time pay for it or have a positive brand experience. Now the airlines are so focused on every piece of revenue, they're afraid that maybe people will bet on getting a free upgrade instead of paying for it, with the net result being, you know, in this article, they were talking about how, you know, one of United's policies now is they'd rather fly with empty seats up front than put people who didn't pay for them there. You know, and as you might imagine, you know, it's like, okay, you know, here's a story they're thinking, wow, we're going to get all sorts of sympathy for our people working on the front lines. And hoo-ha, has that one turned around on them because, you know, there are a lot more people who say United sucks and here's another example of it than people saying, yeah, I love United and look at their poor suffering customer service people. But
they own the brand and
yeah. You know, and you know, it's I guess, you know, probably the way they look at it, you know, those of us who fly a lot realizes that the airline industry is in a race to the bottom and United's winning the race.
Another thing that happened,
that could be the quote of the day.
Say it again.
You know, the airlines industry is in a race to the bottom and United's winning the race.
There we go. I don't think they're going to become a sponsor anytime soon.
That's okay. I love JetBlue.
So another thing that happened,
a good user of social, by the way.
So
really
you know, we talk about privacy and security a lot on the show. And another thing that happened was while you were sitting next to me while I was in Atlanta, I got an email saying you shouldn't broadcast your location. You know, people know where you are. You know that you're not home. That's a security risk. And we talk about the pervasive availability of information and the fact that it's easy to find out who you know what's going on with you. Anybody can figure that out. I'm pretty open about what I'm doing. What would you say to people? What would you respond to them?
You know, I'm pretty open, but interestingly enough, you know, whereas I'll friend people on Facebook who I casually know. I'll accept LinkedIn connections from people who I don't know, but who might appear remotely useful. Foursquare is an area where if I don't know you and I'm comfortable with you knowing where I am, I won't accept the friend request. I have a Facebook group called Location Aware. So anytime I do anything with, Facebook location, I restrict it. And the truth of the matter is, I think I'm fooling myself.
If you're tweeting from Atlanta at the social shakeup and complaining about the W Hotel, they know where you are.
As I said, I think I'm fooling myself. And the truth of the matter is that information is out there now. I can take consolation in the fact that if they know I'm out of town and they go and rob my apartment, they are going to be sorely disappointed by what they find there. In fact, the likelihood is they'll leave the place cleaner than they found it.
Are they going to get the Porsche or the Ferrari?
Yeah, I have both Porsches and Ferraris in my apartment. Scale model. Yeah, a little bigger, 1/24 scale. Okay. Yeah. I'd actually be upset if they took or ruined them. A lot of hours invested in building those.
Right.
But some of it, this notion we're increasingly being challenged. I know we talk a lot about security and privacy, and rightly so. I am becoming of the belief that, in fact, I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm not going to, do like the LifeLock guy and publish my social security number and go have at it. But I've got a reasonable expectation that somebody will steal my information.
Right.
My hope, therefore, is twofold. One, that the people who having them stealing my information, have some understanding that it's been stolen and react accordingly. So, for instance, when your credit card gets stolen, quite frequently there are changes in purchase patterns that make it immediately evident to the credit card companies that your card has been stolen. And these days, the way you're most likely to find out that your credit card was stolen is when the credit card company calls you.
No, this just happened. I got a call that said, did you just make 2 purchases from Western Beef in Brooklyn? There's no chance that I've ever purchased anything from Western Beef, and I'm not in Brooklyn very often. So, those were fraudulent charges.
Yeah. I'm hoping, the system becomes self-correcting at some level to address what are inevitably going to be the breaches. The news this morning, this, hack, again, alleged to be the Chinese of governmental records. They are now saying basically that among the information that was stolen with these 3 million people was their social security numbers. So the social security number of 3 million government workers, has been stolen. What's going to happen? Well, one, what are the people using information that's stolen? So if you're working for an enterprise, I think the government needs to double down on, okay, they may be using this information for blackmail purposes. Therefore, we need to be more aware of changes in circumstance of people with high security ratings, because there's an increased likelihood of, compromise. And so I'm almost to a point now where, yes, I'm going to protect my information, but my advice to people is going to be, you've got to be more aware of, how will you identify when things have been compromised, and how can you minimize your risk exposure when they're inevitably compromised? Yeah, keep the bad guys out, but know when they're in. Kaspersky Labs,
right.
The security watchers discovered this week that they were penetrated by cyber thieves, and they were in the network for 3 months before Kaspersky. If those guys don't know, I mean, this is one of those, like, okay, well, what can we reasonably expect?
Right. So I want you to put your entrepreneur hat on now, because the passwords are inherently insecure. So somebody said, well, let's come up with a way to make it more secure, two-factor authentication. Let's give you not just one password, but something that's close to you that changes on a regular basis. And it could be your thumbprint, it could be a text message or whatever. You're an entrepreneur and in this privacy space. What would you do?
The short answer, if I were an entrepreneur, there's the old observation about two guys being chased through the forest by a bear.
Right.
One says to the other, "We'll never outrun the bear." The other says to the first, "I don't have to outrun the bear; I just have to outrun you." I mean, you're asking me, do I need to come? What's the perfect security product? And I don't know the answer to that. But if I'm an entrepreneur in that space, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to capitalize on fear and uncertainty and come out with something that makes things marginally better.
That's lifelong.
Right? Yeah. Or there are a whole bunch of things, where there are things, the issue gets to be, people keep voting for time and convenience. I mean, I can't be bothered with two-factor authentication. I can't be bothered with this. There are behavioral things. I mean, there are certain situations with more secure websites I've been to where one of the things they do is ask me a series of questions that only I might know the answer to. They'll list 4 addresses and say, which one of these was yours?
Right.
And they'll list something. I lived there 20 years ago. It may be difficult for a thief in the time period available to find that information, especially when they do that with multiple questions. The holy grail, I think, is how do you? Well, you talk about physical security. Fingerprints, haven't proven to be terribly secure. From everything from Minority Report, it's like, okay, I'll take the eyeball. It's like. Take your finger, whether it's attached to your body or not.
No, but every spy movie you say they've already got something on it. They got a little fingerprint on a piece of tape and they put it on.
Yeah, or the things that did facial recognition on your cell phones. People discovered, I'll hold up a picture of you, and it worked. And as we get more sophisticated with projection and display technology, those kinds of things. So the answer, I mean, if you're asking me, what's the holy grail of security? I don't know that there's necessarily one. Maybe the two-factor RFID chip implanted in my brain, so that it's real easy, to implement. Actually, now that I mentioned that, that's probably not a bad business. We do that with dogs today. I mean, that to me is going to be the solution. We have something that has a rapidly changing password that unless I'm physically present, it doesn't work.
Right. RFID or something.
Yeah.
Some close technology.
Of course, with things like that, I'm glad I'm past my child rearing days because, I still think about what the impact, it can't be good holding up a transmitter to your brain. Yeah.
Right.
Something's going on there, and we'll discover somewhere along the way, that we've, changed things. So, that there may be, health things to consider and so on. So, I mean, I think we've got a long way, and I think the answer becomes, how do we detect and respond more quickly? Yeah, I want more security, but that's an arms race.
Right. All right.
The detect and secure is something that I think has been underexplored.
Right. We've got a bunch of news stories that happened recently. Let's see if we can do some rapid fire, just quick responses.
Yes.
That was quick.
we're doing Jeopardy. I give you the answer. Now you ask the question.
Right. Snapchat raises $500 million at a $16 billion valuation.
Yeah. Well, if we're looking for evidence, we're in a bubble. I mean, Snapchat is one of those things. Last month we talked about Pinterest and said, you and I don't understand it, right? Because we're not women.
Right.
You and I don't understand Snapchat because we're not 16. Snapchat's one of those. I understand the desire to have platforms that are secure, and by secure I mean, you know, in the instance of Snapchat, disposable content.
Right.
Yeah, and if you believe that, you know, I mean, are you going to trust Snapchat? Number one, you know, I know people who now get Snapchat messages on their phone, they do a quick screen capture, and guess what? That thing you thought was going away now lives in perpetuity.
Right.
Number two, somewhere along the way, I'm sure Snapchat's going to be looking for contextual advertising opportunities. How do they
the
make
monetization?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oculus Rift not available until 2016.
You know, but available in 2016. Those of you who've not played around with it, you know, this is the augmented virtual reality headset. You know, there's some really cool stuff. I mean, there are some totally immersive experiences that you can get. Now, that said, to me, virtual reality is an interesting thing, you know, that you put on the headset and you go into a different world, you know, great gaming opportunities, you know, bounded business opportunities. I'm more excited by something we call augmented reality, which is basically, you know, how do I blend the physical and virtual? The best explanation I've ever heard of it is augmented reality is, what if you took reality and made it a read-write medium? You know, right now it's read-only. I look and, you know, God, what a motley group it is here. But yeah, you know, imagine, you know, with augmented reality, we can start to overwrite what we see with virtual components. Oculus Rift is really neat. You want to see something really neat? Look at Google Cardboard. Google that. Google Cardboard is something that...
It is cool.
Yeah. You know, it's a small little box made out of cardboard, and you slip your Android phone into it, and it gives you some virtual reality-like experience. But unlike Oculus Rift, which is a huge, expensive, you know, probably when it comes out, I mean, $1,000 kind of price point.
Yeah.
You know, Google Cardboard is something that I think it's around $100 to $200 today. And, you know, that's one of those things, when it gets to any kind of volume, you know, the components required to do it are really relatively cheap. You can see that being an under $100, under $50 item. You know, so while Oculus Rift is cool and trendy and Facebook spent a lot of money for them, I think Google Cardboard is really neat and something. Yeah, if you've got an Android phone, go buy. If you don't, look at it and for the first time have envy of your Android-owning friends. I'll have that for next month.
Well,
I'm going to make you jealous.
But that actually brings us to the next topic. I think Apple has envy of the Android-owning friends with Apple Music.
Yeah, Apple Music. Well, you know, this is something, and my friend Jack Foreman is in the audience. Jack and I I subscribed to music 10, 15 years ago, you know, and Jack was always, you know, you think people really want to subscribe? Don't they want to own it? You know, and I at the time, you know, here's the reason why I didn't want to own music. You know, in the intervening 12 years, you know, I spent, let's say, $100 a year, you know, and for that, I've downloaded thousands of songs. I have access to unlimited music, and it costs me $100 a year. You know, where if you're buying it at $1 a song, you know, you've actually got to make a decision. Do I want to own that song? And you know, I've been a big believer. Streaming unlimited access was what buyers wanted. Now, a year from now, everybody will be lauding the fact that Apple invented streaming music.
Well, but it's about ubiquitous bandwidth availability, because before that, the question was, do I want the music available to me when I'm not on the internet?
Yes. No.
And that was the differentiator. But how often are you in a place where you're not on, except like on a plane?
Well, there are a lot of places. Those of, you know, ubiquitous internet connectivity sounds great until you actually try to live it. You know, I mean,
right.
there are a lot of places.
But that's the value for owning the music versus streaming.
No, but streaming doesn't mean I can't download and have it available offline. You know, there are hybrid models
right.
available. It brings into play the dreaded acronym DRM, right. Yeah, digital rights management. You know, an infernal invention that, you know, makes security look friendly by comparison.
Right.
You know, but I think the answer, you know, it's like everybody wants this kind of access to music, except one, the labels, you know, because what's their role in that world, and two, you know, we clearly have some issues around how the artists themselves get compensated.
Right. But I mean, there's been Rhapsody, Pandora, Spotify. So you're saying a year from now, people are going to say Apple invented streaming?
I think a day from now, there are people who are, you know, again, insult the Apple fans, poke them. You know, but, you know, this will be an interesting one, you know, because there are a lot of times, you know, would I be worried if I were Spotify, Pandora, et al.? You know, they're all talking a good game. You know, we welcome Apple into the community. You know, yeah, is Apple going to get some market share? You know, that's an easy one to say yes. You know, will they be the market leader in this space a year from now? I say no. You know, that the entrenched players have a, you know, good story to tell. You know, and Apple is late to the game, and as best I can tell, doesn't really have a compelling value proposition other than we're Apple and we'll make sure, you know, I mean, distribution is a heck of a value in the fact that they can make sure it's on everybody's device. 1 point for Apple, but you know, if you're an existing user of another service,
you're going to drop it to switch to Apple.
Yeah, and the answer is, you know, probably not. Hence why Apple's giving away free trials of the service. That's not something that's a usual Apple behavior.
Doesn't give anything free.
Yeah.
All right. Wearables. Another story from my trip. I'm getting on the plane, and you know that you can put your you go to scan your boarding pass, right? So this guy, I watch him go like this and turn his arm upside down to try to get his Apple Watch to scan, and it took him like easily a minute to make, and he had to hold it there, and it looked like the most uncomfortable thing.
You know, you know, I'm a big wearables fan. You know, it's like I you know, a believer. There are times when, is it really that hard to reach in your pocket and take out the phone? Is it really that hard? Right. You know, there are times when, yeah, if I'm in the car or I'm in a business meeting, taking out the phone, there's a penalty associated with it. You know, so having it be on me, it's useful. I can do things at a glance. Right. Mobile boarding passes, no. I mean, no.
No, mobile, look, messaging, absolutely. I'm in a meeting, look at it quick. Oh, I can see what it is, as opposed to having it, you know, it's surreptitious. Related to that, so Fitbit, you don't have a Fitbit. You have
a Jawbone.
So Fitbit filed to go public. I don't see, how does a standalone device that doesn't have this screen on it end up owning real estate on your arm?
Well, it doesn't have, you know, that's what needs to be standalone versus what needs to be companion. You know, I mean, 20 years ago, we were talking about client-server architectures at an enterprise level, where we had, you know, servers that were large computers that centrally collected all sorts of data and shared it out, you know, into the network. We now have personal client-server, you know, where I've got a server device, a centralized device, my cell phone, which
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, you know,
yeah, we have a
personal client-server network, right. You know, and I've got things, you know, this connects via Bluetooth. This, you know, for battery reasons, I'm very happy to actually physically plug it into my phone, you know, because I don't need, you know, this information necessarily in real time. I don't need, you know, to know how many steps I've taken, although I can find that out. You know, so, but the notion that I've got a personal client server network, I think is a durable one, you know, that not everything needs to have a screen, not everything needs to, you know, be real time, and we're going to architect information sharing in our personal area and networks.
So do bands survive watches?
Yes.
What's the question? Do bands?
The band
does a band and so
survive a watch that does everything?
The fact that an all-in-one device versus individual device, I guess, is really that's not the question. And you're saying,
and there are several reasons why the answer is yes. One, these are higher price point, and this, is $50. So this is, in some ways a disposable purchase, and and it meets a price point that can get wider distribution than watches that are inherently going to be larger. Number two, this is something where, the low-powered nature of it, the battery charge lasts about 10 days. This, I've got to take off every night and, put in a charger. So there's information, for instance, about sleep patterns that I can gain from the band that I can't gain from the watch. So I think feature function, we've got design targets, what needs a screen, what doesn't need a screen, what needs to be connected at all times, what needs to be connected independent of my phone, so that there are all sorts of architectural choices around this personal local, personal client server network.
I like that. That's my new, I learned something new today.
Wow.
Personal client server.
I was right about something and you learned something new.
I didn't say you were right. I just say I like it.
No, you said I was right before about something.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. I'll have to go to the replay.
You'll have to go to the replay.
Let's go to the videotape.
So you were right, and I liked something that you said.
Wow.
That was clever.
Now, I'll have to figure out what the trifecta is.
All right, so let's go.
9 more minutes to get one more.
Let's go. Let's go to some of our monthly topics. This is actually a new one that we're adding, an app you love. I thought this one was pretty interesting.
Yeah, the app I love is Sygic.
Spell that.
Yeah, SYGIC. It is a GPS system, and you're thinking, okay, why would anybody need a GPS system when you've got Google Maps or Waze or things like that? And I'm a big lover of Waze. I'm a user occasionally of Google Maps. Yeah. However, the way those systems operate, it presupposes you have an internet connection. It's getting its maps down over the internet, and to your point about ubiquitous internet access. It's a myth.
Well, no, look, forget ubiquitous. I was in London last week. I bought a data plan. I had 100 meg for the week.
Yeah.
And so I was rationing how I used it.
Yes.
That's why I thought this was pretty interesting.
Yes.
And I needed to get around the streets of London.
So Sygic is it's a GPS system, but you download the maps. What a quaint notion, but by having downloaded the maps, it works offline.
You used to get it automatically with Microsoft. What was their map? They had a map program that when you bought a consumer PC, you'd get it.
Oh yeah, Street Atlas. Something like that. Yeah, yeah.
But no, but that would have been useful to me last week.
Yes.
And all right. I think we already talked about our shame on you. That was Starwood for their $5 wallet bags and their lack of social response.
Yeah.
Pet peeve. Oh, this one was funny.
Well, let's also do the kudo.
Oh, we'll get to the kudos last.
But I wanted to get to the kudo because we just because we just shamed them.
Okay.
We shamed Starwood. The hotel chain that owns the W. I'll also give them a kudo. How many times do you go to enter a contest, and it's you get an email, click here to enter, then you click, and you've got to enter your name and all sorts of information that it knew when they sent you the email. Why couldn't they have just bundled it into when you click, you're entered and you get it, and that's what Starwood did. There was a promotion that you clicked and the message came back saying, thank you, you've entered. Now, I'll flip it around and what Jonathan giveth, Jonathan taketh away. It's like, why they make you enter these promotions. Because
they want your information.
Well, no, Starwood's already got it. I'm in their frequent flyer in their frequent stayer program. The reason why they want me to click is twofold. One, it's an opportunity to reinforce their presence, and get me to think about the promotion. Number two, they know that a large number of people won't actually register for the promotion, so they don't have to give away the extra miles or the cheaper nights or stuff like that. Why can't we just say, here's the promotion. Everybody's automatically registered. Take advantage of it.
Well, here, so when I registered, they said, would you like to take advantage of our green option? We'll give you 500 points if you don't want to have your towels cleaned and stuff like that. I didn't have to click anything, and it was just done.
Yes. No, but there you had a choice. They were giving you a choice, and I understand. But
if they don't,
to have a choice.
But if from the brand point of view, if I'm not making you make a decision about it, I'm not going to get the recognition that I'm giving you something.
Yeah, but here they're giving you a choice.
No, but for your promotion. So
yeah, but the promotion. Send me an email, or have it at the desk. There are all sorts of ways to amplify the marketing message. Yeah. Making me click through is just an irritant.
All right. So what you giveth and you taketh away to start with. Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about this. This is hilarious. This pet peeve. This is hilarious.
Yeah. There was an augmented reality event earlier this week in California. And as part of an augmented reality event, which is a funny notion in and of itself, why do you have people in a single place, attending an augmented reality event? But one of the things they did to better give the experience for the remote participant, some of you have seen, they've got these like robot-like things. Motorized platform with a neck and a monitor
like
of some kind. iPad or a TV screen. I think these were larger camera, and people can remotely control these devices.
I told the CEO of Freshdesk I need them for the Chennai office.
But they're a neat way of giving you more of the experience of being there, and for having the people who are there, it's like Alan's face would be on this little robot. So looking trim and tall and all
tall. I don't have to go like this for the whole conference.
Yeah. So at this augmented reality event, the people controlling the augmented reality robots all moved them up in front of the audience, blocking the audience's view. So you've got these remote robots, and the people who are physically there are now trying to fight with robots who are blocking their view. It's like, this is a 21st century problem.
I believe that is the definition of ironic.
Yes. Yeah, at so many levels. That one
amuses me. Knocked them down or something.
Yeah. Or gotten in their face, or put a piece of paper over the camera. Yeah.
Right. I was thinking more like soap.
Yeah, or we've all gotten those emails of a YouTube video, where the video's playing normally, and then at some point something jumps in front of the screen and screams. And it's like, okay, I'll sneak up on the robot and put my face in front of it, which ought to horrify anybody.
All right. So we didn't have a fun fact this week.
Yes, we did.
Here's the fun fact. Oh, I didn't flip to the other side.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting factoid. Let's go. Interesting factoid.
Yeah. Apple, and their scale and things is enormous. Interestingly, we think of Apple as, depending upon your perspective, a computer manufacturer, a device manufacturer, an ecosystem provider. Apple, interestingly, is actually a major player in financial markets. They have $195 billion in cash on hand.
How many countries is that more than?
Probably, I think that puts them in the top 7. Yeah.
That's insane.
It's a staggering number, but what do you do with that money when interest rates are effectively 0? So. And that's why people like Carl Icahn, the activists are all, trying to get Apple to do things, buy back money. But one of the ways Apple has done it, they're being an aggressive buyer of bonds in the bond market, and so there's this company called PIMCO, which is, although because of a personal departure, they're not as big as they used to be. But everybody thought of PIMCO and Bill Gross as the bond king. Increasingly on Wall Street, it's Apple who's the bond king.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
190, that's a lot of money.
We're going to leave you with the quote of the month, and then we got to wrap up. Which one are you going to do?
You're going to dare me to do the first one? Yeah. So we'll do a fun one and then the business one. The fun one. So to get the quote of the month, I actually used for Twitter and the fire hose. I searched the hashtag QOTD, which is quote of the day. A lot of garbage, a lot of noise in the hashtag, but there was one that amused me. Someone tells you that you've had too much to drink, tell them that's not true. You're still ugly. and now the relevant one. In this world where we talk about, and here at the Stanford Innovation Center, new companies are urged to get things out in the market and fail quickly. Jeff Immelt, CEO of GE, has embraced this one. He goes, I want people who fail quickly, just not too often.
Excellent. On that note, thank you for joining us for Pardon My Disruption. We are here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be on Friday, July 10th.
2 days after I turn 60.
2 days. Oh, we'll have to do something fun, something disruptive.
Yeah, something old and yeah.
So for Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmis, I'm Alan Berkson, and thank you for joining us today.